Hello and welcome to this level 4 video. My name is Allie with A. Marie Speaks, and this video is going to be another sort of intro level video. Welcome to 4, also tying in some of the pivotal foundational workings that we have already discussed, just to re-cement and reaffirm those guiding points that we have already discussed, and hopefully done some introspective work within ourselves to do our own discoveries of those layers within ourselves, to learn that alchemy work, the light and shadow work within ourselves, in order to now turn our lens and do similar work with others, with actual exterior world, with external systems, and of course with others, right? I'm going to just go over again the reasons behind the inner work first, and the reasons that the sequential offering of this course has been the way it has. Just for anybody who might be brand new here, welcome. You totally can stay and listen to this class, this whatever video at this level, but just understand that this is sort of the tip of the iceberg only, or maybe the thin layer of ice on top of the pond, right? It's very unstable, cracks in it. And there's a plethora of knowledge, a body of water underneath it, available to you that will really help solidify, the whole pond that we're talking about here. And within the whole pond, also like the seasons and the bigger things, that go along with creating ice on a pond, right? The weather and all that. So if, it's all a metaphor. You can listen and get what you can get for now, but know that in the description or in the links in comments perhaps, there are levels 1, 2, and 3, which are crucial to really grasping the full worth of the practices, and especially before you look to the external world. And that's why I really offered the internal workings first with the inner core, and understanding our own inner power, our own inner systems, and how we are the boss of our systems, and how to have self-accountability and responsibility, and a sovereign right to the power of choice that really creates a firm foundation and a tethered anchoring to your right to life, to being here, no matter what kind of source or God or outside purpose you derive your power from, or you choose to believe in, or you want to call your truth. That is not irrelevant. It's most crucial and important, but it's irrelevant to all the workings. It's super relevant to you personally, but to the great workings on the scope of things, it's irrelevant, because all thoughts agree on the great truth, which is, that all things come from before and an after, and they were birthed here with a purpose. That's as simple as it is, right? There's not too much to argue about when you look out and you can see displayed in front of us intelligent design, organic life, and natural flow of things has purpose. Function has purpose behind it. Systems are designed to do a job of sorts. Therefore, they have a role to play. Therefore, they have purpose. And so we don't really need to, we can jazz about the purposes later, but to do work here in the now, and to have a good system for yourself, to see great benefits, and to reap the benefits of your work in the most positive ways possible, it's irrelevant, really. What is relevant is the general workings, and to understand how energy transactions work, their exchanges. What do systems do? They process energy of sorts. What is energy? Energy is information. At the basis of it, when we're just talking generalities, they come in types and flavors, charges, positive to negative. There's a spectrum of individuation that is available But when we break it down to commonalities, we can see everything is energy, everything is information. Just like quantum mechanics breaks everything down, right? And you can see very clearly that everything is made up of matter. Now, not to get too off topic and off focus, the concepts here that I want to cover here in level 4 will be the external systems. And that's why I think it's so crucial that just before we flip our lens and really get talking about what our external systems are, I want to reiterate and just go over a couple crucial points that I didn't get to in my long discussion. If you missed the lecture video, the typical welcome to the level video, 50 minutes about discussion, definitely check that out. I talk a lot about the power of choice and how the inner core and our inner systems workings really are just one of the third part, of 3 parts, of the Taurus tool that is the whole system, right? The external, the internal, and the communication, the flow between them. So, just as a reminder, just like I remind us with the internal core, right? The external is a balancing function. Its orientation and alignment balances and opposes the inner. So when we have an inner core which is negatively aligned, which I talked about already as to how they work beautiful balancing, our positive service will balance out the negatively aligned inner system. And it balances with a beautiful, natural, organic flow and evolution, this ascension possible, creates movement and change and a building when we have these two balancing each other with this negative internal, which is focused on the self, your own self, and then we have a positive external, which is focused on the others. It is actively focused on the others out there to do service. And when we have this contrasting pull of intentions and energies offered, they create between the two great momentum, a beautiful positive charge. And we'll get into that at the end of level 4 again, when I bring back into the internal and we can really look back at service alignments and how they balance with the inner core. But that's just sort of big picture understanding, right? To remember that, yes, we're going to be talking about positively aligned things, and yes, we're going to be looking at externally driven systems, but to remember that there's a balancing function with the internal systems, and that we are not just filling an empty cup, right? We're filling our cup overflowing to help others. Now, this, just checking my notes, sorry to be looking down away from the video, but I just want to make sure that I'm talking where I want to go. The external system overall of you is where we're going to start. Now, the external system, of course, is a reflection and can be interpreted like everything else that we've already talked about in this 3-part Taurus structure. Having an external toroidal functions, external services, having internal services that have to do with the inner processes, and then the Mobius lemniscatic passing and transaction of information that happens between those two opposing structures. I'm going to get into each of those in more depth in future videos, but just as a reminder and sort of a placeholder that our external systems, it kind of seems obvious, oh, service to others, how do we interact with others? And it seems really like one thing, kind of base level. However, it's so much more than that. And if you could recall what we've already talked about with the inner systems and how much variability, how much opportunity for the infinite exploration of manyness is really available within you, we're going to see those same reflections happening in the external systems with minor tweaks. And the external system contains how you deal with others, right? Of course. But that in itself is a multifaceted, multidimensional interactions of many systems happening. Okay, because when we speak and interact with others, we are mind, body, and spirit complexes, right? And that other is also a mind, body, spirit complex, and it is part of this three-part layer, with each three having its own sort of language or system interactions that they're passing through. So when you speak to another, for example, it's not just the sound, the audio, right, that your body's intaking and interpreting. That's just one part. There's the tone flux of the audio. You know, it's not just the words that you're hearing for you to take in, but it's how they said the words. It's the pauses and all of that. It's the body language. It's the things that you're seeing, the facial expression while they say the word, how their body moves while they say it. That's another whole system that you're interpreting, right? When you're talking to someone. There's that cymatic frequency that is passed between you, that spiritual communication that's totally nonverbal, that happens on a whole other layer. There's emotion, there's energy back and forth. There is so many, it's really infinite, because each one of us, is this conscious being with availability to create whatever types of interactions that perhaps we don't have an exact word for yet, right? Or we don't have the scientific meter to monitor and classify this as this term, and it causes this function and this wave. Perhaps we don't have exactly that. That doesn't mean it's not real, or that it's not just as valuable or worthy as other things, like emotions, or a heart monitor response to monitor your breathing, or your stress rates, or your neural synapse, all of these things. There's just leave an openness to understanding that you don't have to have external confirmation based on propaganda from the out there world to say that these are levels within you. These are communications and system interactions that are happening in your system. Because when we dive into our systems and we learn to listen and observe, they show them to ourselves. And we have to trust and listen and understand and see them as viable, capable, and worthy, even if they don't have this little label given from the external world to put on it. Create your own labels is kind of this bit of advice that I'd like, and guidance that I'd like really to hone into before we completely turn our lens and talk about external services in the next video. Because when we talk about external things, it's kind of obvious. We get wrapped up in external confirmation, in external portrayals of our inner thoughts. And that's a very, very wobbly, wishy area, slippery slope to be caught up on, especially if you haven't done the inner work first, especially if you don't have a strong anchoring, a cord to your sovereign worth. If your truth meter, if your heart, if your eternal flame, all of these things don't zing and resonate, if they're not fired up just by you being able to activate and think about them, if you can't feel them yet, work on that first, and don't ever even worry about the mirages in the mirroring that you're seeing out in the external world, because it's delusions. It's tainted and distorted light that you're seeing through window panes and prisms that are cloudy and foggy because you haven't done the inner working, cleansing and clearing of all the centers and all the interpretations, and you don't speak your own inner language yet, and you're out there trying to blab out to others and tell them how to talk and tell them what they're saying when they speak a whole other language than you, and that's their right to do that. This is another big thing we'll get into after we really get a grasp on your external systems on your own, is understanding that the three-part of you that you hold, and this is a bit, out there, and this is a bit of a higher level understanding, so feel free to let it go if it doesn't resonate, or you feel like it's one of those sort of fortune cookie sayings. Um, because a lot of things come off like that at first. It seems frivolous, it seems superficial. But for you, in your own workings, in your own life, you will find the depth. You will find the truth and the real juices in that superficiality for yourself over time. But ourselves as a working here, and as you are, your entire reflection, your essence, is three-part. There's no ways about this. And what are the three parts to understand here is that you have you as you see you, your internal workings, your depiction of yourself, your beautiful masterpiece that you would paint of your self-portrait. And that self-portrait is painted with clarity and depth of your own walk up to that very moment. You know every single step that you took up to that moment. And you paint your picture based on all of those, with every detail in there. Now, and that's it. That's your job, and that's your final touches. You put it on and you put it up there. Others see what they want to see of that picture. They don't see every detail when they first look at it. Think of when you've looked at a busy Where's Waldo kind of picture at first, and you're like, whoa, what's going on? I don't know where Waldo is. But there's an overall picture, there's an overall message that you get with Wherever, because if you've ever looked at one of those books, he's in a park, he's in a museum, he's at the store, he's in, undersea, wherever, in space, you get the overall message of the portrayal, the atmosphere. That's your polarity. That's, how you choose to paint your picture. But every small, tiny little detail, every stroke, every different hue and gradient that you put effort into creating light and shadow to make this beautiful masterpiece that's you, when another looks at that, they don't get all of that at once. The more they look at the photo, the more they might get it. If they speak to you as the artist, they might start to understand the strokes and the effort and the gracefulness you put into it, right? But when they first look at the picture, they're not going to get all that. They're going to get what they get. What they get is based on how they see the world, how their eyes see the world, right? And you don't control that. You don't even hear that. You can never even know that inner world of theirs. Just like they can never know the inner world of you, of your very walk up to this present moment. No one can ever fully know that for fullness, for real. But they still have the opportunity to view your Where's Waldo masterpiece and get what they can get out of it. Find Waldo or not, like it or hate it. That's up to them. And it doesn't have an impact. It doesn't actually change your picture. They're not over there crossing things out, smudging it up, putting their finger. They could do whatever they wanted to it, and it would never change your picture even. They could go put a curtain over it, put black paint all over it. From their eyes, they might have put a black paint over it. They hate you. But that never changes your portrait that you've created of you. It's still there. It's still yours. It still shines out for all others to see. And that's the second part. That's the second part of the working. That's the external service part. And then there's the third part. The third actual is the truth. Source, what ether sees. The big picture view of you, the whole. And that that holds both your masterpiece and every other image that anybody's ever created of you, that any other, person could ever see, is also a part of that whole, that final image that is the truth of source that they see of you, that is the spirit, that is the Mobius lemniscatic flow, that I'm talking about within the systems. Now, understanding this metaphorical breakdown of our systems and us, and understanding external others and the boundaries that get set between their systems and our systems. Presentation of your system, presentation of their system, right? It's really what I want to reiterate and hearken people back to. Finding your own. Worry about your own masterpiece. Paint it up. Spend all your days on it. You'll never waste a moment when you do that. Never, ever is that a poor time spent to be doing that internal working, to be staring at that masterpiece and loving it, to be seeing something new in it, to be adding a little ray of light in there and changing the shadows up in it. that work is always worthy because Source, God, higher self, spirit always is assisting and watching and observing that slow fractal change, that slow morphing of you, of your masterpiece. Every single change is witnessed and appreciated and loved by Source, by God, by your higher self, by those who witness and watch in spirit, who see the multidimensionality with fullness, with more fullness. So never feel like that work isn't as important, isn't in fact more important than the exterior. There's a great manipulation that makes us feel that the exterior is more important, and that also really tries to tie in all those other people watching your masterpiece. And it really tries to tell you, oh, they can ruin it. Oh, absolutely. Totally matters. That only thing that matters is how others see that portrait. So you better try to step into others' shoes as much as possible and assess yourself from their view. You better worry about what they think. You better follow every person in the museum around and make sure they don't come near your picture, right? That's an inversion technique. That's the negative alignment. That's negative systems forcing you to flow in a way that's conductive and conducive to the atmosphere and alignment they're trying to suck you into. They're creating over in their orientation. If you don't like that orientation and flow, you can step out of it and flow into a positively aligned systems, positively aligned interactions. And just saying no thank you, and having a strong boundary, having a border to not interact with things that you choose to not be a part of. And consent to external systems and contracts, beliefs, ideas, conceptions. We're going to really dive into that later in later videos. This is just a little taste, and feel free to take it. If you can hear the keys in there for you, go for it and go with that workings, because it will lead you to beautiful honing and toning of your light and shadow. I am just taking this slowly and offering this to people piece by piece, but understand that if you can hear and you feel the direction of where those things take you, go running if you feel energized to run at that, because there's so much there. But what I really want to kind of just re-tap into and close the video out with is this overall flow of all systems working together, external and internal, before we just look at the external. Just like I kind of gave an idea about the internal, working on the internal masterpiece first and balancing it and not really worrying about how others are viewing our external systems. We work on providing ourselves with the best, strongest internal systems. And then the externals resolve themselves, right? Just like the banking model. If you have a good, strong bank that you run the way that you want to run, and you appreciate your employees top down, and you were a teller and you worked your way up through every single different part of the bank, say, and and you run your bank with this positive polarity, you'll never need to worry day to day about what kind of business is going on in your banks and in the franchises at the root level, right? Because all the tellers will be positive and functioning in a way that creates a positive atmosphere in all the interactions that take place. The external day-to-day functions will take care of themselves in a good way, in the way that you would expect them to when you first have aligned the inner workings. It's sort of symptomatic. And now, to sort of reiterate that point and to understand what the function is, the functionality and interpretation here, is that we have these 3 layers. Whoops, I don't need that notebook. We have mind, body, and spirit, right? Just to keep it simple. Just like our toroidal, right? External and internal in the flow. We have the body as the external, the mind as the internal, and the spirit as that sort of flow. Now, us as a whole system, we take in information on these three different ways. And like I said, we can break them down into many, many, many different complex things, but just to keep it general and just to keep the concept going, right? Mind, body, and spirit each have a language or a system interaction of their own, a world. When we take in information from any external system, any other that we're involved in, that information and energy comes in through the body first. It takes in sensory information, it takes in all those things, sight, smell, your five senses that you would think, all those kinds of interpretations. It brings them in. The body boss handles things first. The first things that are most apparent, most obvious, which are the sensory, textile, sensory information. And the body's boss, depending on its light and shadow work, right, and how honest it is with itself, what kind of system it runs, what its bank's atmosphere is, right, it takes on its information and it takes on what it needs, its info bits that are important to its system, it brings those in and it shares them with its system and it passes them on in a loving way, hopefully, and it releases through that which does not serve its system, if it can. If it's light and shadow is working well, and if it's able and capable to release that which doesn't serve it, if it doesn't have a hoarding tendencies, right? If it doesn't see itself as worthless and needing to hold on to everything, through the filter of the body's boss, it will pass that doesn't serve it into the mind. And through the mind's boss now will pick up all of those input information that is the information tailor fit to the mind's language, electrical impulses, and that type of energy and information. And the mind, depending on its alchemy, its level of light and shadow, how much it's, kind of bank it's running, it will take on what it needs and pass it through lovingly through its system to where those things are needed at. And it will also release and let go through further inside, passing into the spirit layer, the somatic resonances, those deep etheric conversations, the things for the spirit. And the spirit boss, depending on light and shadow work and its orientation of its own system, it will incorporate in that great information that it needs and let go of that which does not serve it. Now, here comes this beautiful mirroring. Everything's opposing, everything is a reflection. Everything has a reflection. So as this information is coming in, it makes its way through the first three layers. What happens with the spirit layer is that it is the portal through to all other layers, all other places of consciousness. And when it passes through the spirit, just like when we see a pole flip, just like with the vortex, we see the shift and the change of the poles, right? The energy direction switches and it changes into spirit inner core. So it's come from your external systems, the external body, mind, and spirit passes through the portal to the internal vortex. It hits spirit first and it passes through, and the inner workings now can get what the spirit has passed out from the external into the internal, and it grabs that spirit stuff that needs. And if you have a good negative alignment in the internal, it's soaking through the spirit things that it needs. Through that spirit soaking into the inner core and passing through its own 0 point, its own center flipping, it passes through and takes on what it does, let go of what it doesn't need and takes on what it does. And it passes now into the mind of the inner core. And your mind does that same working of the inside of you for your inner processes. It has taken whatever ding, ding, ding has come through the little telephone chain line too. Now remember, this works just like that game of telephone with all your friends, except all your friends are inside your head, and these are all your bosses passing messages through, passing a song through, a tune, right? What flavor, what emotions does it have? And so when we come into the inner core again, we're sorry, we've come through the spirit into the mind and then into the body, and it hits the body's internal systems last. And that's important if you remember, because the internal core has this negative alignment. It pushes out. It needs actionary masculine final effort and energies to push out through the universe. That's you to do that service and hand off and hand out all those things that the insides of you need, the nutrients, resources, energy, and information that your inner systems need to get from whatever was outside. And that sort of completes the cycle. And what happens is when you have a good energy behind it all, right? And I talked about this in the other system, we're not really using our inner battery to do any of this work. Those passages of momentum will keep themselves running. And because it's a cyclic inner flow that mirrors itself, there is this sort of push and pull energy that gets created. And the inner core having that extra push then again will come on the rebound and refresh and reflow that external torriedal yet again, because you have an overflow of energy within you and you can push it out into external again. And I'll share my silly little notes here for everybody, but I will make like a way better infographic about this that can really, people can understand, because sometimes you need a visual other than words to just understand this. But to understand that interaction of taking in information, right, that whole steps, the doubling effect that happens, and then the final repercussion that happens, is also 3 parts, right? That is the incoming. That's the pathway of the incoming information. Flip it, reverse it. Our outgoing services, our outgoing systems have that same exact mirrored growth outwards, except it's backwards. It's the exact outwards opposite flow. And then of course we have the third part of which is the ripple effect of both of those happening. Much like an elastic band, when we see a vibration of a band, there's the outer limits, and there's the every little every vibration that happens. But there's the overall appearance that creates this sort of blur of a whole. And that blur of a whole is the spirit, is the third body. And it's really a placeholder for both. And it holds open all of the changes so that every system can hand off and balance. Every system can take negative and positive where it needs to. And hopefully leaving a residual positive charge after all the exchanges are done, when the bell rings at the end of the day. A snapshot image of your functions day to day will always have a positive flow to it and feel to it. And that really is what the spirit is. The spirit is never a single thing. It's ever changing, ever moving. It's breath. And we'll get into that, when we finalize into this, the spirit systems later on. Now, I talked a little bit longer than I wanted to here, but at least it's about a half an hour. Maybe I'll try to condense my next couple of videos into really shorter 20-minute videos, because I tend to think people like those better. Thank you so much for joining me here on this level 4 intro discussion. Again, just to reiterate the system as a whole and what we're doing. I will probably have one follow-up general video before we really dive into the external systems, and talk a bit about what information and energy really are. Just so that just like I went through this sort of threefold multidimensionality of how systems process and do work, there's a threefold dimensionality to the information and energy that they're processing, that they're doing the work of. And so I'll dedicate a whole video to talking about that. If that interests you, I have done 2 podcasts sort of relatively around the same topic that I will share in the descriptions as well if anybody's interested in listening to the ascension of information, which is basically goes over the different qualities of information. And that's a great background video for this next video that I'll do, because basically each system interprets each level of ascension of information in its own different way. So yeah, just to add in another whole area of variability, right? To plug another zero into our counting. Thank you so much for joining me, for listening. As always, I appreciate your audience so much, and your beautiful contribution to our collective. Can't talk this morning. Yeah, I'm going to leave it there for level 4. Please, I hope you look forward to hearing that next video, to just tie up the last bit of what systems are doing before we really look at external systems. Yeah, so you can expect that in the next couple of days. And in the meantime, always find me directly on my website, amariespeaks.com, or you can follow me on Telegram if you use that platform, or on Spotify, BitChute, or YouTube. I will catch you next time.